So this is my second part of my series where I go through my Blu-ray collection. Actually, most of them are DVDs, but who's counting? With that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Last time I went all the way from Numbers through The Expendables. You can check out that video at the card up above if you haven't watched it yet. Without further delay, let's get going. First up, we've got Ever After, a delightful retelling of the Cinderella story with Drew Barrymore, who I enjoy in movies, and I believe it's Dougray Scott as the handsome prince in it, who you probably don't know who that is because he didn't have much of a career after this movie because he chose to be the bad guy in Mission Impossible 2, which ran over, so he had to drop out of a little film called X-Men playing Wolverine. So instead we got some other nobody named Hugh Jackman who has become quite successful. So yeah, if you want to see a guy right before he almost became famous and then didn't become famous, watch this movie. Next up, we've got Fahrenheit 9/11. In case you're wanting some left propaganda about the Bushes, that's quite entertaining to watch. Here it is right here. I find his documentaries very interesting. They're, of course, very slanted, biased. They're not good history, they're not really good politics, but they do give you a narrative that a lot of people believe. Now, if you want to counterbalance this, you can watch this and then watch Fox News, and you'll see two very biased people trying to spin raw facts into a narrative that supports their worldview. But for all that saying, I enjoy all of the documentaries he's done that I've seen are enjoyable. I've actually seen him live in person. He spoke at the University of Texas back in like 2002, 2003. I went to go see him, back in my rebellious early young days of being a college student. I didn't actually go to UT, but I live in Austin. But so, yeah, anyway, Michael Moore, he's actually on the news quite a bit these days because he made some insightful comments on this whole Trump deal that apparently he was one of the few people who thought that Trump was going to win. Not that he was going to vote for him, but that he thought he was going to win. He did win, and he won probably for the reasons that Michael Moore was listing. So there you go. Next up, we've got Failure to Launch, a movie that is primarily of interest because Bradley Cooper is like a side character in it. So in general, it's just a rom-com with Matthew McConaughey and Sarah Jessica Parker at a point in time when Matthew McConaughey was doing tons of movies like this where there's some kitschy idea of why some guy's single, and then there's some manipulation to get the two people together. There's a figure that out right before the third act. Boom, there you got a movie. But yeah, Bradley Cooper's like his buddy in it that's in a lot of the movie, like throughout the whole deal. And you're watching it thinking like, I remember because I saw this before Bradley Cooper became famous, and it was kind of on the rise where right before Bradley Cooper became Bradley Cooper. And so you're watching it thinking like, that guy seems like above this material being like the, number 5 highest billing on, well, this. Well, yeah, it also has Zoe Deschanel in it. It's like a movie packed with side people that are above the material that they're in. Maybe even Kathy Bates. Yeah, Kathy Bates is in it. Very interesting film with a very good supporting cast. Well, I guess a good leading cast too, but not great material. Next up, we've got The Family Man with Nicolas Cage and Téa Leoni. As I mentioned in the first video, my wife really likes Téa Leoni, and so she really likes this movie. It's directed by Brett Ratner. It has Nicolas Cage, and that's all I'm going to say about it because I guess I've seen it. I just don't remember it. Next up, we've got a big stack of Fast and Furious movies. So I'll just talk about all these together at once. So the Fast and Furious franchise is maybe the most interesting franchise going on right now in my mind. Well, I can't say that because the MCU is really interesting me. There's a lot of really interesting franchises going on that are running long and getting better as they go along, which is unusual. Normally, franchises don't have the level of success that these two have. So in the case of Fast and the Furious, the first movie, as has been noted many times before, is basically Point Break, except with cars and not as good of actors. And so I saw it and I was like, okay, whatever, passable entertainment, not really my deal. I'm not a Cars guy, so whatever. Then I went to go see the second movie, actually with my mom, which it's a weird movie to go see one that's like girls bending over cars in bikinis with your mom. So I went to go see this movie, and I actually liked it more than the first movie. It's not necessarily a better movie. It's just, it sort of embraces the cheesiness and the goofiness of it a little bit better, where the first one was just so serious. And so I had a good time with it. I left it with a much more positive feeling than I left the first movie. So I skipped Tokyo Drift. I was like, whatever, I don't care about this at all. So didn't see it until I think after I even saw number 4. So I watched number 4 in the theater. I was like, hey, maybe there's something to this. By this point in time, the franchise, 4 movies in, it's 5-6 years old. It's like, okay, that was a pretty decent 4th entry. They brought some of the cast back, or they brought the cast of the original back. So, hey, this is fairly decent. I kind of like this. And my wife, by this time, I've been married several years, and my wife was like really into the series because she's kind of into cars. So she's getting more into these movies than I was on my own. And so then the 5th one comes out, and they added The Rock into it. I was like, hey, that's cool, The Rock's in it. And this is before The Rock became The Rock. Like, Rock's been famous for a long time, 20 years, famous in movies, 15 years. But him is kind of like this A-list actor that just is like spearheading and leading up all these movies. That's the last 5 years. And one of the movies that started that was Fast 5. So he was in it. I was like, that's pretty cool. I enjoy him. So we go to see a midnight showing of this at like the biggest theater in the local area. And it's exactly what you're thinking. Like, I mean, muscle cars everywhere, people in the parking lot, like vroom, vroom. It's like a scene straight out of the movie. I mean, just as ridiculous, packed midnight showing at a massive theater. So, I mean, there's so much energy in the room. And we got pretty good seats. We're in the middle, pretty high up. And the theater, very high stadium seatings, and a guy starts running down from the top of the stairs, and there's like a stairwell down here, or stairs down here, and about halfway up, and there was like an open space above where the stairs would walk around, and he jumps over, like a 10, 20-foot drop, just jumps over it. You just hear the whole room go, oh, did he just do that? Jumps down, and he was fine. It was like, that's the energy, insanity of my seeing Fast 5. And then I watched the movie. Not high expectations, because it's a series I didn't really like up to this point in time. Watch the movie, and I'm just blown away. Like, I had way too much fun. I laughed way too much. There was way too many scenes where I was like, that was awesome! And, I mean, Fast 5 was probably one of the biggest surprises. I would say that's probably the best movie-going experience of my life, just because it was so bizarre with the, muscle cars in the parking lot, the guy jumping over, the energy of the room, and just the level of my expectations versus where that movie delivered, where there's such a big gap there. That great time at the movie, so I really enjoyed that. So anyway, that's that one. And then after that, I was like so pumped about the rest of the movies as they started to come out. So I went to go see the 6th one, even dumber than the 5th one, even more fun than the 5th one. Maybe not better than the 5th one, but equally it's just great fun entertainment. They figured out what their series was all about. And then I didn't get to go see the 7th one when it first came out because I'd broken my foot that year and I was on bed rest. I literally could not leave my bed for 2 weeks with a broken foot. And so I was so disappointed because I had such a good midnight experience with the first 2 that I missed out on number 7. But yeah, it's one of those franchises. It's now like one of my most anticipated franchises, with the 8th one coming out and what they've done with it. And like, we're having Jason Statham come in and Kurt Russell comes in, and like just, Gina Carano being in one, the Ronda Rousey. Like, they've done such a good job of keeping them fun and exciting. And just so bizarre that like the first 1, 2, 3, 4, I was like, whatever. And then now it's one of my most anticipated franchises. I think that's awesome and bizarre at the same time. And yeah, anyway. Oh, and Tony Jaa. They added Tony Jaa. One of the first, not one of the first movies, but a movie one of my wife and I went to go see, like, our first year of marriage, was called The Protector, which stars Tony Jaa. It's a crazy Thai martial arts movie. It's sort of the craziest, awesomest, most athletic martial arts you'll ever see in a movie. And so I was waiting for Tony Jaa to cross over, and it didn't happen. And then he kind of made some movies, and he kind of went crazy and became a monk for a little bit. And then over the last 2-3 years, he started to show up in Hollywood movies, but maybe a little bit too late. Like, the excitement of him was gone. And so, but yeah, Tony Jaa's in the 7th one, which is awesome. And so, yeah, he's up in a movie soon too. What is he in? What is that movie that he's in? Oh yeah, Vin Diesel, his new buddy. He's in the new Triple X movie. There we go. Tony Jaa. Check him out if you haven't seen him. Next up, we've got Ferris Bueller's Day Off, of course, an 80s comedy classic. I'm not like a gigantic Ferris Bueller's Day Off fanboy or anything like that, but it's kind of impossible not to like this movie. Or, I mean, if you don't like it, tell me in the comment section. You'll be the one person I've ever met that doesn't like it. Very fun, very funny, interesting take. It has some heart to it. It has so many things that just work. But like I said, I don't have anything terribly interesting about it. If you follow the movie news community, like Collider Movie Talk, apparently John Schnepp is in a scene in the movie, so that's fun. Next up, got Fever Pitch, another, as you noticed, Drew Barrymore film, a rom-com with the Jimmy Fallon in it. I've only seen this like one time. My wife doesn't watch it. It's not like she talks about it. I don't really know why we have this movie. It was probably like $5 somewhere, and we're like, hey, what are we going to watch tonight? Let's pick up Fever Pitch. So it's enjoyable enough. It's the rom-com formula. It's a movie that's only interesting because of the leads in it, which is most rom-coms. If you like the leads in it, they follow the formula that works. But so, yeah, anyway, don't have much to say about that. But Field of Dreams, this is kind of one of those movies. I don't remember when I first watched it, but it feels to me like one of the first like serious movies that I remember liking. There was a drama. It wasn't action, comic booky, cartoon. It wasn't anything like that. It's like a family drama that it's the type of movie that you can watch it and enjoy just kind of the mystery and the kind of eeriness of it when you're young. And as you get older, you can start to appreciate it more. And especially like for me, my dad died when I was 20, so I never really got to know him as an adult. And so a movie that kind of is about that sort of exploration of family and dynasty and getting to know more about your dad that you didn't get to know, those are themes that really resonate with me. And so when I've rewatched it more recently, like it was like, wow, this is still a really good movie. Just really powerful while being so odd. Like, it's a weird movie if you just step back and think about it, but it works because it's so honest and heartfelt and earnest. And so if you haven't seen Field of Dreams, you need to watch this. And if I didn't have a homework assignment to watch like 4 Harry Potter movies before I shoot a video for this week, before the new thing comes out, I'd probably watch this tonight because I'm very interested. Next up, Final Destination. This is one of those series I was never super into. But I liked it enough. I enjoy it enough. It's not bad. Just, it wasn't my thing. If I'm going to watch a horror movie, I normally go for something, well, I guess it is rated R, so I don't really have an excuse. It just never connected with me. A few of my friends really, really like this series, but for me, it's like, okay, people cheated death. Now death's trying to get him. Cool. Not my thing, though. Next up, Fireproof, the Kirk Cameron Christian propaganda film. So, as I've said many times, I'm an evangelical Christian, so I'm very much in those circles. So I in no way am looking to trash Christianity, the faith, or Christians. However, Christian movies, I have no problem saying negative things about those. I've never seen it. You can see the rappers still on it. There's a channel called Say Goodnight Kevin, where there's a Christian guy that reviews Christian movies. And so I think I watched the one for this. That's as close as I've come to watching any movies in this series, is watching the videos on his channel. But yeah, the problem with kind of almost all Christian movies is that inherently when you make a Christian movie, you have an agenda, a message that you want to communicate. And so you go, here's the message we want to communicate. Now what's the story we want to tell to get to that? And so inherently they start to come off very much so like sermon illustrations, except in film form. And it starts off and you can see, as someone that's delivered many sermons in my life and written a whole lot of sermons, you can just see the way you would structure a sermon, and like, here's where people are at, here's where you want them to be, here's what they need to learn in the middle. Boom, beautiful. We've got a sermon illustration in movie form, and that's kind of what this movie is. You see a guy before, in the middle, and after. It's not my thing kind of at all. While so many people think it's my thing, that's why I own this movie. I'm sure someone gave it to me like, oh man, this will save your marriage. It's like, yeah, I read the Bible to get these sorts of truths. I don't need a movie to tell it to me. And I write sermons like this. I don't need you to give me a movie. I get it. So anyway, like I said, I don't mean to pick on Christian movies, though they're very easy to pick on because it's frustrating to me because it's my tribe. It's the people that I'm a part of. And it feels like there's a products being kind of pandered to them, and in ways that just I look at it and I go like, what? This isn't good. You're not making a great film first. You're making a message, and then you're having a message and packaging it because you know that that's what'll sell. Then something that'll make people go, oh yeah, this will help your marriage. And then you've got the tag along Bible study that goes along with it. And here's the sermon series, and oh, you can market this directly to churches, and it'll get them to rent out theaters. That stuff just it really bothers me when Christians are viewed as just another market in the marketplace, because that's not what the church should be. And so that's a problem for me. And so anyway, yeah, sorry, that's a little bit of a religious rant. On to a rated R movie. The Firm. This is kind of nearing the end of when Tom Cruise only did dramas, because he didn't all this action movie stuff. That kind of started with Mission Impossible, which was a couple years after this one. So I think this is one of the first rated R movies I saw in the theater. And yeah, it's just a great not courtroom, but he's a lawyer, crime thriller, what's going on, based off a John Grisham novel back when they were like pumping out every year a really good John Grisham adaptation. And so that great movie. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend you check it out. I think there was a TV show with Josh Lucas, a guy that my wife used to think I looked like him. So he had a TV version of that ran for a season a couple years ago. I meant to check it out. I never did. And so I guess I'm the reason it got canceled. But yeah, check out that movie. It's very entertaining. Next up, Forrest Gump. I'm of that age where I was like 13 when this came out. So, 13 when it came out. And so for me, this is like one of those movies that it's like, it's the best movie ever made. How do people not like this? Not realizing, like, if I rewatch it now, I can see where people like it's overly sentimental. It's whitewashing history. There's a white guy that's the savior of it. I mean, all kinds of things where I can kind of see where people are coming from now in their criticisms of it. But who am I kidding? I think this is a great movie. I think there's a reason it won 6 Academy Awards. There's a reason that Tom Hanks became kind of a legend. It's fun. It's funny. It's emotional, and it deals with real emotions through the lens of someone that has a very simplistic view of things. And so you get a very authentic view of things. And so a great, great movie if you haven't seen it. Next up, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I think I've seen it 1 or 2 times. Hard R, raunchy comedies aren't normally my thing. I remember it being funny enough, but at the same time being not funny enough at the same time, that I was like, okay, I mean, I guess I kind of get why people like this, and at the same time, I don't really get it, because some people absolutely love it. So at some point in time, whenever, I guess, there we go, Blockbuster was going out of business, so it was cheap, and I was like, hey, I haven't watched that in a while, so I bought a copy of it and watched it once, and now it's been sitting on a shelf until I pulled it off just now. Next up, a movie I have watched probably a few too many times, and that is Four Christmases. So this is one of those movies we rotate through every Christmas, that we watch every single December, and apparently this one got trashed by critics. Most people didn't like it, and I don't really see why. It's enjoyable enough. It's funny enough. If you like kind of romantic comedies, it's a decent movie. And for this type of movie, it's got 2 likable leads that are funny. Like Jon Favreau's kind of got a small part in it. And like the whole supporting cast of it are all people that you've heard of, that you know, that do a funny job in it. And it moves quickly because it's 4 Christmases. So you keep going from place to place to place. And so it kind of has all these setups to have just enough of a funny joke, then you move on to the next one. So I guess I had low expectations, and so I didn't expect much. But so I get kind of confused when why people don't like it or like trash it more than other rom-coms. I just don't get it. Next up, we've got Frequency, the movie with Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel from the year 2000. It was just turned into a TV show about 6 weeks ago. I did a review of the first episode. I'll try to remember to put a card up, but I probably won't remember. But it's a very enjoyable little time travel thriller family drama film. And it's not like a great film. It's not going to blow your mind. I wouldn't huge recommend it. But if you like time travel, if you like family dramas, it's a good time. It's a good movie. It's just a solid, good middle of the road, middle of the road in that sense of like, it's not aiming to change the world, be the best movie ever. It's not aiming for big grandiose things. It's not aiming for Oscars. It's just trying to be a good time travel thriller with some family emotional drama stuff. And that's what it is. And I think that's perfectly fine. So check out Frequency. Next up, if you don't know, if you haven't heard weird sounds as I've been talking, my son is on the other side of the camera doing all sorts of things. I think trying to get me to laugh. Isn't that right? But can't nod your head. You have to say something. Yeah. There you go. Next up, we've got Friday Night Lights. As you can tell, this is still in the plastic wrapper. This movie has a very interesting place for me. So I live in small town Texas, and specifically I live in the area where they shot the TV show Friday Night Lights. Where I live, Friday Night Lights is the most beloved TV show of every teenager that I know. And I know a lot of teenagers. Well, I guess that most of them are older now, so they're in their early 20s. But like people love the TV show Friday Night Lights where I live. And like you can go through the first episode and I can just point to like all these little signs, places. I could tell you exactly where about 10 different things are in the first episode alone. And so that's kind of how beloved it is. And there's a girl that kind of starts in I think season 4 that went to high school with with some people I know. And so all these connections to it. And it's the TV show. It was created, developed, showrun by Peter Berg, who directed the movie. And all that to say, no one ever talks about the movie ever. It's like the forgotten thing when it comes to Friday Night Lights, even though everybody loves Friday Night Lights. And so I've actually only watched the movie one time, even though I've watched through the series like 2 times and had so many conversations with people who've watched through the show 10, 20, 30 times. So anyway, Friday Night Lights, as a Texan, it's like, you know, the TV show is kind of life for us. It's what it's really like. All right.
This is my box. That's my box right there.
Okay.
For me to pick.
Did you want to talk about something?
Yeah, is yours first, and then it will be my turn to pick one, and then I will put back in.
Next up, we've got the Fugitive and U.S. Marshals. This is important to note because this is how I do my collection, how I organize it. It is alphabetical, but when it comes to a franchise, something like U.S. Marshals, which is the sequel spinoff of The Fugitive, then U.S. Marshals goes next to it. They're also in the same case, so it kind of forces the matter for me. But, so The Fugitive, I would say, is one of the best action thrillers of all time. It is just a great movie that has exciting sequences, that's smart, that's fun, that has a mystery, that you really care about the characters and you really care about what's going on. And so, great movie. Excuse me. Then a few years later, they came out with a sequel, U.S. Marshals, which is okay. It's good enough. It doesn't embarrass the franchise. It's not awful. It's kind of more the same, but it is really quite different from The Fugitive, especially because the perspective of The Fugitive is mostly of the Harrison Ford character, whereas the perspective of this one is much more back and forth between the characters. But what really makes U.S. Marshals interesting is that is that Robert Downey Jr. is in it. And so if you want to watch, you're not looking to watch one of his serious dramas from like 25 years ago, but you want to see kind of like what was Robert Downey Jr. like back in his 20s, right probably as he was hopped up on lots of cocaine, check out U.S. Marshals and you'll see him in a very different role than you're used to and see him much, much younger than you're used to in that movie. But overall, great first movie. Kind of classic example of the unnecessary sequel that they only made because they thought they could make money doing it. Next, I guess you want to go for it. Next up, what do we have? What is it?
Thomas and Friends.
Thomas and Friends, the Christmas Engines. What did you have to say about it? You got to have something to say.
Christmas.
Oh, it's a Christmas special. Is this one your favorite? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's your favorite. Awesome. Excellent.
And then after, he had a Christmas. That's mine, I was going to say.
All right. Thank you. Next up, we've got...
Yeah, next up.
Full Contact. It is starring Chow Yun-fat. It is directed by Ringo Lam. But calm down a little bit. Ringo Lam, and basically it's kind of back before Chow Yun-fat had started to do U.S. films, and it's when he was doing a lot of these kind of movies where he's either a police officer battling the undercover mafia type stuff, or he's kind of this mob type guy, the mob enforcer. So in this one, he's a criminal, and he's left for dead after a job, so he's out for full revenge with Full Contact out to get them. I don't really remember the movie too well, other than to say that it wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. So he did movies like The Killer, Killer Hard Boiled, forgetting the first one, but it's the first one that he did with John Woo, and they were all so good and so like vibrant action and engaging stories that when I saw this one, thinking it was kind of like, oh, Ringo Lam's turn to kind of doing one of these John Woo movies, and no, it's not like that. So I was pretty underwhelmed by it, unfortunately. Next up, we've got Fun with Dick. Buddy, you're throwing me off. We got Fun with Dick and Jane. Once again, you can see with Taya Leone. This is a movie that a lot of people haven't said great things about. I haven't seen good reviews for it. But for me, my wife and I just really enjoyed this movie. Thought it was fun, funny. Touched on some relevant issues of the time. And I don't know. I mean, I didn't necessarily agree with the politics of it, but at the same time, it's a fun enough, good enough movie that, we thoroughly enjoyed. So I don't have much to say. It's kind of one of the last movies Jim Carrey did where he was funny, and it was like 10 years ago, which is kind of sad that I don't really know much of what he does these days. But anyway, yeah, there we go. Fun with Dick and Jane. Next up, we've got the original film, Fun with Dick and Jane, which is still in the plastic and we never watched it. I found it at Best Buy for under $5 and I was like, hey, we like the remake of that. We should pick that up and watch it. And, yeah, we never did. Then we've got Galaxy Quest. So I'm a huge lifelong Star Trek fan. My wife is not a huge lifelong Star Trek fan. And we both love this movie equally. I actually saw this one in the theaters when it first came out. And so then I introduced it to her later on. It's just a great both spoof and just reverent love for Star Trek fans, Star Trek conventions, while just being a good movie. One thing, if you've seen any like ranking of the best Star Trek movies, people will include this one in the mix because it's a much better movie than a lot of the Star Trek movies, but it's a better Star Trek movie than a lot of the Star Trek movies. So yeah, very good movie. If you haven't checked it out, even if you're not a Star Trek fan, it's a lot of fun with a great cast. And I mean, and just you look at the cast and just look at the main three people and you go, oh, Tim Allen, maybe you like him, maybe you don't. But you have Sigourney Weaver and Alan Rickman, and that's just the starting point. The whole cast of this movie is pretty incredible. So, yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would highly encourage you to check it out.
Next up.
You're actually a little bit early on this one, but we have Home Alone. Home Alone. Tell me about Home Alone.
A spider.
There's a spider in it? What happens with the spider?
He puts it on his face.
Oh, he puts a spider on his face, and then what happens?
He screams.
He does scream. So once again, Home Alone came out like I know, a year or something like that, younger than Macaulay Culkin. So I was like the absolute perfect age for Home Alone when it first came out, and Home Alone 2 when it came out. And so this really was like the greatest movie of all time at the time that it came out. To me, my friends, everybody I know, just because, watching people grown-ups get beat up by a little kid was amazing. So great family fun. It holds up really well. It's a little bit interesting as now I watch it now thinking like, how did I sit through the first hour and 15 minutes of this movie? Because the first hour and 15 minutes is not the booby-trapped house. The whole movie is marketed, the whole appeal of the movie is the booby-trapped house, and that's only the third act of it. So you've got 2 acts before that, and they work really well. And we've gotten him to sit through the whole thing many times, and I'm sure he'll sit through it this year. So somehow this movie works, even though it feels like it shouldn't work, but it's just that good a movie. And our last movie of the day is going to be Get Smart. Get Smart stars Tim Carell, Steve Carell, and Anne Hathaway, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So this is a movie that I grew up watching Get Smart on Nick at Night back in the 90s. And so I liked Get Smart, so I was interested to go see it. I didn't watch The Office at the time. And so my wife and I went to go see it, to be like, oh, I guess that looks funny enough. And we really, really liked it. And so then after the movie was over, we went, who's this Steve Carell? We should check out what else he's done. And so this started literally like 4 months straight where the only TV show we watched was The Office. And of all the TV shows of all time, I think I've watched seasons 1 through 4 of The Office more than anything else ever. Anyway, back to the movie. Yeah, it's a very fun, enjoyable action spy comedy with a, if you're going to remake Get Smart, I don't know that I would recommend that you do that, but if you're going to do that, they got the right cast to do it. And so it's a very fun, enjoyable film that I would highly recommend you check out if you haven't seen it. If you like this sort of thing, if you don't like goofy kind of comedies, you probably don't want to check it out. But for this type of movie, they did a really good job. And what's great is that Zod plays the villain in it. And so Zod from Superman 2 is the villain. So, whoa, buddy, did you have some sugar? So, anyway, there you go. That's our last movie of the day. He's got a couple more things for me to ask you about, which he's never seen. First off, T-minus. This is a collection of countdowns, which is not fun to watch in any setting at all. Next up, we have The Pixies, a compilation of Pixies music videos. These are not movies, but he handed them to me anyway. And then we have The Beatles celebration, a celebration of the Beatles. And then this CD called the DGC Rarities Volume 2. It has a demo of a Nirvana song, and it has a demo of a Weezer song, in case you're wondering. Anyway, he's just handing stuff to me at this point in time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to keep doing this. Buddy, I gotta close out the video. I've only made it through the G's thus far. We got a lot more shelves. We got a lot more movies to watch. I can't wait to talk about him with you. I'm not quite sure if he'll come back. He doesn't seem to stay on task. Want to say bye to everybody?
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for watching.
I'm gonna click the thumbs up button.
Click the thumbs up button. That's right. What else do they need to do?
High five.
High five. Yeah, you guys too. I guess that doesn't work because it's a video and you're not actually here. So if you have any questions, tell me in the comments section. I'd love to talk with you guys. Have a great conversation. Conversation is probably a better word to use. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, consider clicking that subscribe button if you've never clicked it. I would greatly appreciate it. We done?
Not yet.
Oh, we're not done.
We need still more books.
These are movies.